Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to another exciting episode of Desire Wellness. I'm Kim McNicholas, and today we are diving into a topic that affects all of us daily: salt. It's a four-letter word that you may or may not want to avoid. We are going to be exploring the good, the bad, and everything in between when it comes to this essential mineral. Joining us today is our esteemed guest, nurse practitioner Deidre Arms. With her extensive experience in healthcare and wellness, Nurse Practitioner Arms has been at the forefront of educating patients about nutrition and its impact on overall health. Her expertise in cardiovascular health and chronic disease management makes her the perfect guide for our salty journey today. Nurse practitioner Deidre Arms has been practicing for more than 15 years with a special focus on preventative care and helping patients make informed decisions about their diet and their lifestyle. She's known for her ability to break down really complex health topics into easy to understand information, basically empowering her patients and all of those who are watching to take control of their well being. And today we will be tackling some of the most pressing questions about salt, from its benefits to its potential risks, and of course, again, everything in between. We're going to explore the different types of salt, debunk some of the common myths about salt, and provide practical advice for maintaining a healthy balance in our diets. So, without further ado, why don't we welcome nurse practitioner Deidre Arms? Hello, Deidre.
Hello, how is everybody?
I think everyone's doing amazing. And this is the first time we are streaming live on your channel for Nurse Practitioner Deidre. So we're really excited about that and to welcome all of those viewers on your YouTube channel, and as well as those that are with the Weight of My Heart and the Global PAD Association. So this should be a really exciting episode and lots of great information to come. So are you ready to help our viewers navigate the world of salt?
I am. Let's get those shakers out and start talking.
Shake things up. Okay, so let's just start with the basics of salt. We all need salt in our diet. Back from our early beginnings. Can you explain the potential benefits of salt in our diet?
So from the beginning, like salt is essential for life. From our earliest ancestors to today, we've always needed salt, but why do we exactly need it? It's because it helps with our fluid balance, helps with our nerve transmission and muscle function. And in fact, sodium is the key component of salt, and that helps to maintain proper blood pressure. So it is necessary, yes, but there's a fine line between enough and too much, and that's what we're going to dig into.
Yes, yeah. So the most common salt we deal with is the iodized salts. It's your basic table salt. What are its pros and its cons?
So, iodine salt was introduced in the 20s to prevent iodine deficiencies, which can lead to thyroid problems. So, if somebody has a thyroid goiter, that's an iodine deficiency, right? So, this salt was introduced to help treat that. It's great for ensuring that we get enough of that iodine. So, if you have, the standard American diet, you are getting enough iodine most likely, but it's also highly processed, right? It can contain anti-caking agents to keep it from clumping. So pros and cons would be that the iodine helps the deficiency, but the processing leads to over consumption of salt that we
And
intake.
you find a lot of this type of salt in all of our canned goods, I would imagine, as a
Yes,
preservative.
hmm
Yeah.
you do.
Especially, I got a call today from the California Department of Emergency Services asking me if I have my go bag ready in case of an earthquake, just following on the heels of the natural disasters over on the eastern seaboard, right? And everything that she was talking about, make sure you have the dried this and the canned that and canned this and canned that. And I said, you're setting me up for a heart attack. And she starts laughing. I said, it's actually kind of not funny. I mean, all of these foods, in case of a natural disaster, they're riddled with salt. I once did a commercial for a company I will not name, and it was a packaged stew that literally the lead preservative was salt. and it had like I can't even like thousands of milligrams of salt in this one serving of this stew that would be a part of your go bag. So that's always concerning. I mean, we hope for, no natural disaster, and maybe for a short time it's okay to get us through, but definitely not a long-term answer or something to be filling your cupboards with for an everyday basis, I would imagine.
Right. In terms of like historically when we've had natural disasters or war and things like that, most of what we are eating are canned, processed, over salted in that situation. So we do the best with what we have, right? So if you have to pack your to-go bag and you have to be using it, well, we know that when the situation becomes better, then we go back to not using that, right? Not overusing. So,
Fresh whole foods, always the best. So,
yeah.
how did salt suddenly become overused? And what are the potential dangers, of course, again, of excessive salt consumption? And I know I teased at it a little bit there.
Yeah, how did we get here, right? Salt was once considered rare and prized, but now it's everywhere, thanks largely to processed foods or ultra processed foods. So manufacturers add salt for flavor and preservation of the foods as well. And then as a result, we're kind of consuming way more than we need to. So excess salt leads to that range of health issues such as blood pressure issues, making an imbalance between the electrolytes that we need, which brings us to the main problem of blood pressure.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit more about blood pressure. How does salt specifically raise the blood pressure? And are there any common misconceptions about salt and blood pressure?
So, salt causes your body to retain more water, right? We've talked a little bit on other episodes where using Celtic salts and things can pull water into the cell. And that's what it's doing. It's helping you to retain more water, which that increases your volume of blood flowing through your blood vessels. So that extra fluid puts more pressure on the walls of the arteries. And then over time, this can lead to damage and increase your risk of heart disease, stroke, peripheral arterial. And then
Yeah,
the
go ahead.
misconceptions would be one common myth is that you should cut out salt entirely, right? If you have high blood pressure, but that's not the answer either. Your body still needs a small amount of sodium to function properly.
I wanted to get to that point. You mentioned peripheral artery disease and you mentioned heart issues, but there's also diabetes. How should people approach salt consumption in general, especially when they have those diseases that affect the vascular system?
So, in short, cautiously, right? We want to monitor that sodium intake because too much sodium increases the risk of further damage to the arteries. It does raise the blood pressure in excess and it can worsen overall cardiovascular health. So when we reduce the intake, that's the key there, reducing it. But it's important to talk to your doctor about what's the right balance for you. One of the common things that we look at on a comprehensive metabolic, which is a lab draw, is sodium. So sodium is looked at in your CMP. And so looking at that with your provider, trying to get a grasp on what your disease process is and what would be best for you.
How is it just possible? My dad ended up with a call from his doctor saying he had low sodium. And it's interesting, he has heart disease. So, how is it possible for someone with heart disease or even peripheral artery disease to have low sodium, especially in today's world?
How's his diet?
We actually do not add any regular, we do not have table salt, and I do not add any salt to his foods. I do not offer him any canned goods. We don't even have canned goods in our house anymore. We don't have packaged goods. And so maybe no salt is not so good salt.
Right. It's that balance that we were talking about. He may just need a little bit to like even increase that. So, because there are times when increasing is necessary.
Yeah, talk about some of those times when increasing salt intake may be necessary or even beneficial. I would imagine the case with my dad would be one of them.
Exactly. Like we know that he has low sodium, so we'd want to add a little bit with that. If, anybody's doing intense exercise or sweating, if there's any signs of dehydration, and how do you know if you're dehydrated? If your mouth is dry, you're dehydrated already. If you're pulling up on your skin and it doesn't bounce back, that's a sign of dehydration, sunken in eyes, things like that. But if your body is losing electrolytes rapid, so even with a fever, sweating, other illnesses, you might need a bit more sodium. But again, paying close attention to that fine line. It doesn't mean that we have to be eating hot dogs all day and getting 2,000 grams of sodium in a day. We gotta manage that.
Yes. Yeah, we don't even put hot dogs even in our vocabulary when it comes to a heart healthy diet
Exactly. Yeah.
at all. Well, let's talk about the different types of salt and the pros and cons of each. Um, first, are there any to completely avoid if at all possible?
If we can avoid the highly processed table salt, right? It isn't the worst thing in the world, but if you're looking for more natural options, then we've got some other options here that might be better for you, to give some flavor and things like that.
So tell us a little bit about the nutritional value and potential benefits of green salt. I've been reading a lot about that lately. It seems to be the salt du jour plate.
Right. So that's kind of a newer thing here. It's made from a plant called Salicornia. So it's naturally lower in the sodium part of it and it has higher potassium. So that can be beneficial if you're trying to cut down on that sodium, but you don't want to lose out on the flavor. Green salt would be that. And, that's an interesting option for kind of lowering sodium intake.
What should we know about Himalayan salt? This
Uh,
is one of my favorites just because it is pink, and pink is my favorite color, much to my YouTube producer Joshua's dismay, because usually I'm always wearing pink. I deliberately did not today because we were talking about Himalayan salt or pink salt. But is it truly healthier than regular table salt?
So it's praised for its trace minerals that's in it. But those minerals are present in tiny amounts. So it does have slightly less sodium than regular table salt, but it's also much pricier. So you, that's kind of where, it has some trace minerals in it as well and less
How about
sodium.
how about sea salt? How does that shake up?
Less processed there, right, than table salt. It retains the trace minerals. It can contain, though, microplastics due to ocean pollution, but it's still higher in sodium, so you want to use that sparingly. I will say, I was at a conference recently. I know I've talked about it, but there was a company that had a type of sea salt, and you did like a little shot of it, and instantly I felt energized after having this sea salt. So I thought it was pretty interesting because I've not like just chosen a sea salt, and I wanted to um, see what it was all about and taste it, and it really did give me some clarity there. So I must have been a little deficient in some trace minerals and wasn't getting as hydrated as I should have been.
Oh,
So
that's interesting. It was was it a special type of sea salt from a certain sea?
it
And
was, yeah, it was from a certain part of the sea, and I can't even remember now. I think it was near the Mediterranean where it came from. I'd have to look that back up.
did you ask them about the trade the possible, infestation in a sense of plastics in
I
it.
did. So I do know that yeah, there's at this part of the world, there's less of that happening and everything. One of the things I studied a while ago is like, where do you get the most minerals out of what type of sea salt? And what I consistently found was the Baja sea salt from the Baja Sea had a lot of trace minerals in it as well. So I did try that out for myself. Taste is very comparable to other sea salts and Himalayan, right? With that reduced sodium level, but an increase in the minerals. And that's why I wanted to try it.
What about, and this one is my new very favorite. What are the unique properties of Celtic salt, or is it Celtic salt? And does it offer any health advantages? My dad was actually told by his dietitian that in order to raise his sodium, he needed to put just a pinch of this Celtic salt in his water 4 times a day, which I thought was really interesting because why Celtic salt?
So it comes from the coast of France. It's a grayish kind of salt, but it's low in sodium compared to table salts, but it's really rich in minerals like magnesium and potassium. And it's considered one of the healthiest salt options when used in moderation, right? It does come with a higher price tag, the Celtic or Celtic salt, but putting that little bit into the water. So we usually say if somebody is kind of dry or dehydrated or needing sodium, 60% of the water they drink in a day should have a little bit of minerals in it. And you can use the Celtic salt and it will help to put water in. And by using it in a drink, it literally is a small pinch.
Can you debunk any popular myths about the so-called healthier salt alternatives?
Yeah, a lot of people think that if they switch to natural salts like the Himalayan and the sea salts, that they can use as much as they want, and that's not true. It's still salt, so that's the big myth we need to take out of here today. So
Yes.
with these salts, you get the trace minerals, but it's not a free pass to overconsume, right? Moderation is still key. So that's the big debunking there, that just because something is natural doesn't mean you just go overboard on it.
Okay. Much to my dismay on that one. I love this Himalayan salt and I love the Celtic salts. So, how can people like me effectively reduce our salt intake without sacrificing flavor in our food? Are there any sort of healthy alternatives to salt for adding flavor to our meals?
Yes, the answer is yes. Herbs and spices. Um, when you add herbs and spices like oregano, cumin, chili powder, right, you can make those with your dishes, but you're also, by adding those flavorful spices and herbs, you're getting the polyphenols from the spices. So that's really a good thing for the body as well. You could add a splash of lemon or lime juice, right, for extra brightness, adding that. Garlic and onions add some depth without sodium as well. Your vinegars like balsamic, apple cider vinegar, they can make your dishes a little more tangy. So breaking out the spices and everything. And you have to watch the blends though, because some of those blends could have a salt in them. I have a seasoning that is predominantly a salt, like when you read the ingredient. And so I'm like, that is for limited. Although my husband would use it on every single thing he eats. So
There's the Mrs. Dash that's out there. And I'm wondering what you think about those products.
So, in moderation, the Mrs. Dash products have a lot of herbs and spices as
Mhm.
well. So gives a lot of flavor, and I know they're recommended as a good alternative for people with blood pressure and cardiovascular issues
Mm,
as well. One of the salts we were asked about was that Maldon salt, which is a
yeah.
popular variety of sea salt. And I wanted to make sure to touch on that, it's known for its flaky, delicate texture. And it's often used as a finishing salt. So finishing salts are sprinkled on a dish before serving, right, to enhance flavor. It gives a little bit of a crunch and everything. But it's like the other sea salts, they contain the trace minerals, but the sodium is comparable to those other sea salts as well. So it, kind of the same picture of the other sea salts, Himalayan and the natural ones, is just in moderation is what we're looking at.
So really that overall, it's about moderation no matter what salt you use. You're definitely better to use one of these alternatives to table salt, at least today, because these ones are less processed. It doesn't really matter which alternative you use. It depends on what benefits you might want. But it seems as though the Celtic salt in your description has the greatest amount of trace minerals, the magnesium, potassium, sodium, all of the above, but also less sodium than, let's say, your processed table salt.
That is what it's looking like. That the verdict is out. That's probably the top one, but it does come with the price tag too. So if we're looking for a budget, another, some of the other sea salts would be comparable, just not as much of the trace minerals.
So, sea salt or Himalayan salt, which would be one above the other, or are they pretty comparable?
They're very comparable. Depending on the sea salt, if they're in an area where there could be microplastics. I know one of the things that I learned is that we consume about a credit card's worth of plastics every single week as a human because of all the microplastics on our foods and things. So if you're really into that much of it, maybe the Himalayan would be a little better.
Gotcha. I want to open it up to our studio audience. I know that Marcia did ask about that molten salt and to see if we've answered her questions. And if anyone else has any questions about salt, go ahead and raise your hand or go ahead and unmute and um, and ask Nurse Practitioner Deidre your question or provide your comment. I know we have Kim here and we have Heinz. We have Heinz that doesn't like most of the vegetables out there. Who's here with us? I'm sure he likes a little salt in his food though. And he's not going to answer me, but Marcia will. Marcia, go ahead.
I had everything I really was curious about, I had answered. And so I thank you. I think one thing maybe you didn't talk about was snacks. And I mean, we talked about canned goods, but when you look at potato chips or Fritos or who knows, like just packaged processed in general, I guess it goes without saying that they're high in sodium.
Okay. Should we just say no?
Uh, uh, my, the greatest advice I can give you is to shop on the perimeter of the store and don't go down the aisles where the salt and ultra processed foods are.
Yeah. Thank you.
And even nuts, Kim was asking about nuts, and there are salted nuts. And the thing is, in all of these processed foods, you have highly processed salt that's in there. They're not going to use, for the most part, there might be a few organic outliers that might have, let's say, roasted almonds with organic sea salt or Himalayan salt or something like that, which may be okay, but there's still what I discovered because I got pumpkin seeds and I got roasted pumpkin seeds. And of course, it's in a not so healthy oil. So now I can't use these pumpkin seeds and I have to go get a pumpkin and make my own pumpkin seeds and roast them with my really good olive oil and use a little bit of my Celtic salt or Celtic salt afterwards.
I found that problem when I was looking for nuts to snack on, that a lot of them are roasted in an oil. So I found a
Yeah.
good heart healthy one that it's not roasted in any different oils at Costco. And I was like, it was a mixed one. And I was like, finally, I found something and it didn't have salt. So they even on the label say it's heart healthy. But even if something says heart healthy, flip it over and make sure you're looking at the ingredients, make sure you're looking at the sodium content and that they have and what type of oils. That's a big thing. And we talked about oils before, but canola oil is the cheapest and really the hardest one for us to process, and it's what's used in a lot of processed foods.
I don't know if this is a good thing, but my dad and I, we go to the farmer's market and we get a whole bunch of a variety of different nuts. And then, once every few months, we'll take a handful of each one and we'll put it in little baggies, the little sealed snack packs. But I'll add a little bit of garlic, a little bit of cayenne pepper, a little sprinkle of wasabi powder. So you can actually get a jar of it where it's just dried wasabi. We sprinkle a little bit of that on it, put a little pepper. So it's a little spicy and we shake it up. And we don't even need to add salt to it. And it has a lot of flavor. If you're doing that, you can even just stick them in your oven for a few minutes and roast them. And then you have roasted nut mix with all of the lovely spices on it. But it really, really helps, um, to give you a little snack. Marsha was asking about snacks, and that's what we do is we do a little bit of that and a handful of blueberries, and it makes for a really nice snack. Or that and an apple.
Yeah, adding those spices in, whatever ones you like. We all have a little bit of a different palate there. I couldn't do wasabi, so I would have to pick something else, but garlic is a great one. But, flavor it to what you like without adding salt. So, utilize those herbs and spices that you have available to you.
I think it's so smart. And now you probably understand why my dad is probably low in sodium is we tried really not to use salt in just about everything. Even last night, I made an all natural spaghetti sauce and I added, diced tomatoes and mushrooms and spinach and onions and lots and lots of garlic. And then I sprinkle cayenne pepper across it and I add some red chili pepper flakes. And it doesn't make it too spicy. It's all about the amount that you put in. And I really do it in moderation because I can't handle the spices as much either. But it gives it so much flavor with, adding of course, the oregano and basil and such that you don't really need the additional salt. I don't miss it at all. And it's filled with flavor.
It's true. And I don't know if you've ever made like a bean soup from soaking the beans versus getting them out of a can. You definitely can tell the difference when you're making like even a chili or a lentil. Or if they've already been in a can, it is way oversalted compared to taking it, and soaking the beans and doing it yourself. So
Oh, soaking the beans, it's so much work.
it is.
Sound
No, it
like work.
really
It's just
is.
an extra step for me, but it is worth it health wise, isn't it?
It is. I did it with some black beans, and it was the first time I'd done it with black beans, and I was like, "Oh, whoa, this definitely has no salt in it." I didn't put any in, and I was like, "What was I thinking?" So needed a little bit with that. Definitely need a little bit and a lot more spice.
What was frustrating is I was on Instagram. I go on Instagram and I look at I like the influencers and what they cook, and they have a lot of healthful cooking influencers. And one of them I was actually a little disappointed in because she used chickpeas. She opened up a can of chickpeas. And then normally what I do if I use chickpeas, I try to rinse them as much as possible to get as much of the salt and other, whatever off. And she says, take that can of juice in there, don't waste it. And she actually uses it to make a dip. And I'm thinking, God, that must be loaded with salt. I would never do that. I would literally just dump the juice out. I would never use that. I don't know about you.
No, the thought of the juice from beans and
Yeah.
stuff, and it's not appealing to me.
No, not at all. And Marcia has another question she's dying to get in.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not dying to get it in at all.
No, you're living to get it in.
No, I'm not. I'm just participating. But I wanted to say I keep nuts and a few raisins, but I do baggies and I keep them in my car for after I hike. And it's an excellent snack. But I was going to ask, since Kim, you do a food thing. One thing I was never good at, and I haven't done it for years, but that was roasted pumpkin seeds. And if you're good at it, I would love for you to do one of your food things on it and show us. And it is the season.
'Tis the season to experiment with it. I didn't say I was good at it. I said I've done it and I can tolerate my own. They don't turn out exactly like you get the bag. But it might be worth a try one of these Fridays, maybe next Friday. This Friday, we are going to do natural, fresh, wholesome taco shells, not using corn, not using flour. You might be wondering what we use. We have three options. One, we are going to be using, because those are loaded with salt, we are using jicama and we are going to freshly slice them. And the jicama, we're going to use a mandolin to do that. The other option is a piece of iceberg lettuce, which is helpful if you don't have digestive issues. Iceberg lettuce makes for the perfect taco shell. And the third one we're going to do is it's a little less healthy, but it's still healthier and it doesn't contain all the salt, is an avocado tortilla. So we're going to mash up avocado, egg, and a little bit of Daya oat milk cheese. And we're going to mix it up and make it into a patty. And then we're going to saute, put it in the frying pan. And we're going to just crisp it up a little bit. And that'll be our natural, healthier taco shells.
Actually sounds delicious.
Right?
Yeah.
So good. With those tortillas that I make with the avocado, I just sit there and I have to make one that I just put aside as I'm making the others and just nibble on it because it is so good. So delicious. So yes, that's this week. So maybe next week we can do some roasting. What do you think, Marcia? She's out there. I bet you she's in the yard. But
Hi.
yes,
Yes,
that's
that sounds good. I like that very much. Thank
okay.
you.
And we also have one more comment coming in from Kim, and she is wondering about the low sodium canned products because more and more companies are coming out with low sodium, but low sodium in canned food is not necessarily even still at a level that is considered healthy from my experience. I don't know about yours.
No, that's true. And remember, the sodium that they're using is often the processed one, right? So you would want to really look at what's your total sodium that you're able to have based on your conversation with your provider, and really make sure that you are not, even with the canned goods, overdoing it. They do say, fresh is best, then you're frozen, and then cans if you're packing your bag like Kim was told to do today. So
I was thinking, you know what? Are they saying that they're predicting an earthquake? Is this what's going on?
I hope not.
Yeah, I seriously, me neither. That the 1989 one was enough for me.
Wow.
Yeah, I'd never seen boards in a floor actually bend like they did. They lifted as it was rolling, as the ground was rolling, boards. I even lifted up. I was on a roller chair and I even lifted up and then came down and then lifted up and then came down. It was crazy. I was also in an earthquake over in Japan and I was on the 16th floor. And you wouldn't believe how those buildings can sway. I mean, it was like, whoo, and that metal bends.
Oh, wow.
So it's crazy. Not looking forward to, because they say that whatever earthquake is next here in California, it should be a big one. I'm praying not, but we are we have a lot of seismic activity out here.
Yeah. So,
So I gotta still have that go bag. So maybe you can help us figure out a healthier go bag that we can put together that might have less salt and less bad things than other ones. I think that's a great idea.
I think it is too. You know, some of the things that they say that we should have on us ready to go, um, as in food, but also some other things for these healthier go bags. And
Yeah. Well, I think that we have covered as much about salt as we can. If anyone has other questions about salt that this triggers, go ahead and put them in comments, and our YouTube producer Josh will grab them and bring them to our attention. And in another episode of Desire Wellness with nurse practitioner um, Deidre Arms, or I think we're going to be shifting that to calling it Ask a Nurse Practitioner with Deidre Arms NP very, very soon. We'll go ahead and we can answer those questions in a future episode as well. We're here every single Wednesday, or just about every Wednesday at 4:30 p.m. Eastern time. Make sure you do go to youtube.com/@ the weight of my heart and subscribe to our channel. And you can also go to Deidre's new channel. I think her YouTube channel is youtube.com/@ NP Deidre. So make sure you subscribe to our channels. Make sure you like this video. It is so important to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and then you can check out the live tab and get notified for every single time that we are live here. We address a variety of topics, and maybe one of these episodes you can share a topic that you'd like us to discuss and dive into. Which brings me to our final thought of the day, nurse practitioner Deidre. What do you think for next week? What are we going to talk about?
well, I've been focusing on the questions for our one at the end of the month. So what sounds good next week for anybody?
You know what I'm thinking is I think that we should do something, because our Halloween show is going to be with a very special guest. So maybe we do something a little early. Maybe we can check out the healthier trick-or-treating items. What do you think?
Yeah, healthier trick-or-treating items. You know what's really cool is I grew up in a very small town, so you probably had to walk a quarter of a mile to the next house. And when I trick-or-treated as a kid, many of the elderly women on our road actually made our candy. Like we had caramel popcorns, we would have caramel apple. Like you would get a full on big piece of something they made.
But you know what? Honestly, natural, and I mean homemade, it's not necessarily because of all the sugar that's likely in it. But anything homemade is, I would imagine, is better than something that has the addition of preservatives, anti-caking agents, and all that jazz, and thickeners, right?
Yeah, I thought it was just special. I still remember that, and here I am, 50 years
Yeah.
later, still thinking about it.
But we can do, because everyone gets, a little nostalgic around Halloween. Maybe there are things that we can, look at that might, you know, satisfy that nostalgia, give you a little comfort, that we can, you know, it'll be an alternative to the Snickers bars and Milky Way midnights. Oh my gosh, Milky Way midnights. I've not had one in years. Um, oh, I should not be dreaming of that. But there might be some other options. For example, you can now find oat milk or almond butter. That's what it is. Almond butter, dark chocolate, Reese's peanut butter cups that are organic, a little healthier. might be some options. There might be some maybe kind bars or something like that, but I can leave it up to you. But Marcia has a thought. Marcia, do you have another thought?
I do. And it's along the lines of what you guys were talking about. But, a lot of the holidays fall on the women, and, women now work and are busy. And I was kind of thinking to talk about how to maybe cook healthier, even maybe with some recipes, but for the holidays, like different ways to do the turkey that, isn't so bad. And the sides, seems like at the holidays, a lot of the sides have canned goods in them. And so
Like,
for Thanksgiving, maybe, and Christmas, just in general.
yeah, we could do that. We could do a series maybe in November. That would be kind of fun.
Yeah.
I love that idea because we're always, especially, I think a lot of the traditional side dishes all came from companies that were making packaged goods, and you know which ones I'm thinking of. But so maybe there are healthier alternatives. For example, that famous green bean casserole. Actually, 2 years ago, Marcia, I made that on camera, and I showed a healthier way to make the green bean casserole. And it was really surprisingly, me cooking it. It was delicious. If I could make it delicious, I think anyone could.
I did the same thing when my best friend's mom died. I made homemade um, green bean casserole, and it was delicious, and it had nothing canned in it. It was all natural. It had a little bit,
Wow.
not near as much. It was good. I don't know
Maybe
what.
we need your recipe.
Well, no, because it was pre-PAD. I don't know that I used cream, but it would have had some kind of thickener in it that might not have been like what you use.
Uh, well, we could always substitute it. We can use arrowroot. We can use xanthan gum as a little bit of a thickener. And that's
My
what I
my
use.
one
My
my one
cream.
treat was I used them sparingly, but I used some of those onions. The crispy onions on top. Where normally we would do 2 cans, I did like a sprinkle.
Yes, you do. And I actually showed how you could do little crispies, and I got, you can use hemp seeds on top for a little crispy. And you can also, uh, put those onions in an air fryer with, soak them in a little bit of egg and then sprinkle them with hemp seeds
Hmm,
um, and gluten-free panko. And it made literally, and I added some garlic to them, and I just put them in the air fryer, and they were delicious.
sounds good.
So it's an option. You got to practice though, just a little bit. I watch the Food Network and I watch those influencers, and I always wonder, how many times did they have to do this before it actually looked good? Because mine never looked good the first or second or third time. I usually have to, get a little bit of a rhythm to it and do a little, um, trial and error to get it absolutely perfect for those. But once I got it, it was actually really good. Really, really good. And Heinz has a question or a comment or some insight to share. Go ahead, Heinz.
Hello, Deidre. With regards to all the salt topics we had today, they have iodine in them or are supposed to. Is any of them like have too much iodine?
So our table salt is the one that has the most iodine, but it's highly processed. So that one, everything in moderation is what I would tell you. We're not finding that we're getting an overabundance of iodine where it's negatively affecting health things, though. And we have seen a decrease in, thyroid goiters since using table salt. So I will say that most of the time, if I see somebody with a goiter, truly, they did not grow up in the US. So, and they didn't have the access to the iodized table salt. So that's the one that's the most processed, the most, supplemented with iodine and everything. But I haven't seen where there's a negative of getting too much. It's more getting too much of the sodium piece of it.
Thanks.
And I wonder if there are other ways. Are there other ways that people can get the iodine they need if they're not using? Because I can imagine when I ultimately get married and I start raising kids, I'm not going to have the table salt in the house. Are there other ways to get that much needed iodine?
So I supplement if somebody is truly low, you can supplement with iodine. You can actually draw an iodine level and see where you are. That's one of the things that we do as
Gotcha.
well. Like you can just get iodine.
That's good to know. That's good to know. Probably less processed than the way it is manufactured with salt. So, well, okay. So I'm thinking next week, is the jury still out? Are we still going to think about what we're going to do next week? Or do you think we're going to do some sort of Halloween healthy alternatives
I'm
for
ready
your
for that.
Okay, me too. I was hoping you'd say that. Okay, so next week, that's what we're going to do. Make sure to get to our YouTube channels and subscribe to them. And so when we do post the promotion for next week's show, you don't want to miss it if you've got a sweet tooth. Make sure you subscribe to youtube.com/at NP Deidre and also youtube.com/at the way to my heart. And join us every single week when we have a different episode with nurse practitioner Deidre, and she asks your burning questions about health and wellness with a different topic every single week. Thank you so much, nurse practitioner Deidre.